It's my absolute pleasure today to welcome everybody, and more importantly, is it more importantly? Yes, Lisa's. To introduce Lisa Ventura. Lisa is not only a visionary in the world of cybersecurity, but an individual that I've had a pleasure of knowing for quite a few years now, and we've had many discussions around mental health and neurodiversity. And Lisa's taken us on a slightly different journey to the one she normally talks about, which is staying safe online. I think you can see that on the board behind her. But Lisa's details are in the registration page, and we'll also be putting all of her social media links when you get the update email at the end of this webinar. But like always, I am merely here as a segue to introduce Lisa and what she's going to be talking to us today, which is different voices, different perspectives, neuro-inclusion and mental health. Lisa, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here today. So just going to talk about the fact that everyone is absolutely unique, and our personal identity comes from our experiences, our background, our thoughts and our feelings. So today, please feel free to answer any questions that you might have. And your well-being is the most important thing in the room today. Myself and Simon are here to help facilitate that, and my role as well is to make sure that your well-being is looked after. You can opt out of the discussion at any time, and you can leave the webinar at any time. And the session's designed to improve your well-being and not detract from it. So a little bit of background about myself. As Simon rightly said, I've been in cybersecurity since around 2009, and as he also said, it's a little bit of a departure today for me to be talking about this. I got off a talk this morning talking about fostering greater collaboration with cloud security, so that's very much what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm the founder of Cybersecurity Unity, which is a global community organization in cybersecurity that I've put together to bring organizations and government representatives together to have meaningful discussions about how best to try and combat the growing cyber threat. And I'm a qualified mental health first aider, and I undertook my certification and my refresher course with Thrive, and that's how I know Simon, and that's how I know of Thrive, and I've had a lot of interactions, as Simon said, with him over the last few years. So a little bit about my personal story. So I'm openly neurodivergent, and I was diagnosed with autism in 2018. And that came about by chance because I took part in a study that Worcestershire Healthy Minds was conducting, where they were looking for undiagnosed autism in women between the ages of 40 and 45. Happened to be asked by my GP at a consultation for something else entirely, if I would fill out a survey for that, which I did, and some meetings and assessments later, it turns out that I am indeed autistic. But I knew that that wasn't the only piece of the puzzle with me. So in 2021, I asked to be referred for a ADHD assessment, and I was put forward for that, and finally, after a long wait, got that assessment in January. And as well as being autistic, I was also diagnosed with ADHD. And also, interestingly, in that assessment, I was diagnosed with borderline personality traits, which comes from trauma and abuse that I've been through in my lifetime. And as a result, I've had a lifelong struggle with anxiety and depression, and I was also diagnosed with PTSD in 2014. And I've also experienced some quite significant bullying and abuse in my work life and also in my personal life. And I believe that this is through being neurodivergent that I've been targeted in such a way. So I thought I'd start this off with talking a little bit about what is neurodiversity. Well, it's the concept that all humans vary in terms of neurocognitive ability. And for some, the variation between their strengths and weaknesses is more pronounced, which can be a huge advantage, but it can also be very challenging. And neurodivergent people tend to find some things very easy and other things incredibly hard. And this can often lead to an inconsistent performance at school or at work. So, for example, with myself, I'm very confident and very competent with my work life. I can bang out the tasks, projects, everything that I do with no problems at all. But when it comes to simple things around the house, I can just completely lose it, and it frustrates my husband massively sometimes. And I believe that he absolutely deserves a medal for putting up with me. But he'll often say to me things like, "For goodness sake, just focus on one task. Don't to move off to another." But my brain is always running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it's always, oh, I've got that task to do, or I've got that to do, or that's got to be done. And then this comes into the mix, and it's just a complete overstimulation in my brain all the time. And I'll often just put something down, completely forget about it, and move on to something else. And that's the struggle that I find, particularly with the ADHD side of the neurodiverse conditions that I have. So I do have a lot of those challenges, and a lot of people will say to me, you know, in your work life, you come across fantastically. You do all this great stuff. You write all these great pieces. You talk well, and at home it can go completely to pieces. So it's really true that you can find some things very, very easily, and yet other things you can find very challenging. So neurodiversity and mental health, I'm going to talk a little bit about, are they one and the same? Well, neurodivergence is a bit different from mental health conditions such as anxiety or depression. It doesn't appear suddenly in adulthood or after a pivotal experience, but the only exceptions to this are with conditions such as, say, schizophrenia, that often begins in someone's 20s or 30s. And from my own experience, what I've just described, particularly on the ADHD side of things, I can pick up on going way back to when I started school. So, for example, if I were to look back at all my report cards, it says things like, Lisa rushes all written work, Lisa doesn't keep quiet, Lisa doesn't sit still, Lisa's too much of a chatterbox, all those things that I can look back on now and think, aha, those were some pivotal things that I should have realized or picked up on a lot sooner, that could have pinpointed to my being, you know, diagnosed with ADHD. Similarly with the autism diagnosis I had, I can't bear a lot of overstimulation. So loud noises, bright lights, lots of noise and chatter and things like that. I just can't cope with. So I made the decision, actually even before my diagnosis, to work solely from home and just go to the odd meetings or the odd event or things like that. But I cannot cope with working full time in an office. Now, that's not to say that if I absolutely had to, I would go and do it. I did it for many, many years, and I could never work out why at the end of the week, I would be just so exhausted, spend the whole weekend trying to recover from that. And then by the time I had recovered, it's back to work and you do it all again the next week. Even a hybrid model doesn't work for me because I need that strong amount of decompression time after I've been in that kind of environment, just to get myself back onto an even keel again. Otherwise, I risk a lot of burnout or just feeling completely overwhelmed as a result. So even after this talk today, I will be decompressing. I've deliberately not booked anything else this afternoon, just so I can have that quiet time to get back on the on that even keel I really need. And research shows that anxiety and depression are a lot more common in some neurodiverse individuals. And that's certainly two key things that I've struggled with massively throughout my lifetime to varying degrees. So links with physical health when it comes to neurodivergency and mental health. So neurodivergent people are more than twice as likely as those who are neurotypical to have hypermobile joints, and they're also far more likely to experience pain on a regular basis. And they're also more susceptible, interestingly, research shows, to autoimmune illnesses and chronic conditions such as fibromyalgia. And in April last year, after experiencing some very, very strange, painful symptoms and pain in different parts of my body that were just to move around, and a lot of exhaustion and other things that just couldn't be explained, I received a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So I have to factor that in as well and really take advantage of the good days that I have, because if ever I get a fibromyalgia flare up, it's quite debilitating, and it really doesn't make me want to do a lot of stuff or be very active. So it's something that, on top of all the neurodivergent conditions that I have, I also have to look at managing on a day-to-day basis to make sure that I can be the best that I can be. So the cost of poor employee mental health. This can cost employers $56 billion a year, and the average cost of mental health in the workplace is $1,684 per employee per year, which is huge. And only 25% of neurodiverse employees feel financially secure and emotionally balanced. In the research as well that Deloitte produced, 50% of neurodiverse employees feel burnt out from work, compared to 38% for neurotypical employees. And just to give you some examples for myself, I could go on for weeks and months at sort of high speed and churning out projects and work and so on. And then I would just crash into a big period of burnout. And I would have to take some time just to go, no, I'm not taking on any more. My cup's overflown. I have to put on my own oxygen mask, which is an analogy that Thrive and Simon talk about a lot, which is you can't be of any good to helping others unless you put on your own oxygen mask first. And that comes down to if you're in an airplane and there's a situation that the mask come down, they always say, get your own oxygen mask on before you look to helping anybody else. And that's so important when dealing with burnout and just trying to manage your mental health and how you might be feeling. So let's have a look at some of the stats when it comes to neurodivergency and mental health. So employees with autism and or ADHD are 30% more likely to have chronic employment issues. And I can attest to that firsthand because I've been in situations where I've experienced quite significant bullying in the workplace. And that's made me want to then move on and leave organizations. And 60% are more likely to be fired from a job. 3 times people are more likely to quit a job impulsively, and 70% of neurodivergent employees will often experience mental health issues, which has led to calls for better employer support. And without the right support, those that are neurodiverse can face many barriers to accessing opportunities at work. And I think a lot of organizations are getting better with that. They are providing employee assistance programs and looking towards what they can do to support neurodiverse employees in their organizations. And also realizing the strong benefits that neurodiverse individuals can bring to organizations, particularly with organization, creativity, and so on. For myself, I can't bear a lot of the what we call the water cooler chat or the get-togethers and going out for drinks. But I know that despite all of that, I can still be a really good team player, and I know that I can be trusted to, you know, get the job done. So working with individuals and providing that much needed support can be absolutely key to those that are neurodiverse. So here's a few reasons why those who are neurodiverse might be more susceptible to mental health issues. So it could be a lack of support in the workplace. So not knowing who to go to or who to speak to, not having those important employee assistance programs, or having good HR support in place. That can be quite detrimental. Anxiety around work performance. So for me, I'm always sort of looking about, is this piece of work okay? Is that piece of work okay? Is that landed well? What are they going to think of this? And also I think as well, educating employers a bit around the use of language, or providing some context. So for me, if I get, for example, a Teams message or an email saying, can we have a quick chat? My anxiety will often go into overdrive, and it'll be, oh, what have I done? You know, what do they want to talk to me about? And it's quite unnerving. So providing some context, or something like, you know, nothing to worry about, and the conversations around X can be really, really helpful to those that are neurodiverse. But the biggest reason, and something that I absolutely identify with, is masking to fit in with neurotypical employees. So for years and years, I masked and tried to emulate and tried my absolute best to fit in with groups and to fit in with other people, especially in the workplace, because I knew and I felt inside that I was different, that I wasn't like everybody else. And I struggled with social situations and social cues, and working out, you know, what the right thing to do or to say is, or, you know, is this appropriate? Is that not appropriate? That whole piece was contributing to my anxiety. And that whole process of masking to fit in was really taking its toll on me. So I'll talk a little bit more about masking. It's a survival tool for those that are neurodiverse, for engaging in neurotypical societies and organizations. And many neurodivergent people will do it to fit in, to avoid bullying or criticism, or to avoid being judged. So I was always looking for ways I could emulate other people to fit in with a team or to fit in with a group. And by doing so, I thought, maybe I can avoid being bullied, or, you know, maybe I can avoid being judged, or, you know, for example, I have some quite what I consider to be strange interests. I don't know if you can see on the video, but behind me, I have a Protect and Survive poster. For years and years, I completely masked the fact that I have a huge interest in all things to do with nuclear war. Ever since I saw the film Threads when I was at school, that depicted a nuclear attack in the UK over Sheffield. And I would just never talk about it. I would hide it. I hid a lot of the fact that I was really into the band Queen and Freddie Mercury, with almost an encyclopedic knowledge of both. But now I don't. I'm a lot more forward with what I consider to be those very odd or strange interests. And I didn't share, and I masked them because I did not want to be judged in any way. And people may also mask to avoid stigma, to be more successful at work, or to make friends and social connections, and to have a sense of belonging. Ironically, since I took the mask off, my social connections and my friend base has actually grown exponentially. And I've built a strong network of people from all over the world in different time zones, thanks to the use of social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. Now, they do have their downsides, you know, of course they do, but they also, if used for good, can be really, really good tools to provide those really important support networks. So I know that if I just need to reach out and speak to anyone, I have friends in different time zones. I have friends in Australia. I have a close friend in California. I have a friend in Singapore. I have a friend in India. I have friends all over the place that I know. If I wake up in the night and I just need to reach out to someone, usually somebody's around or online. And that's been really, really beneficial for me. Plus, I'm better with the online as opposed to the face-to-face connections. I can talk a lot more easily online than in the virtual world than I can in a face-to-face capacity. So why aren't today's workplaces conducive to those that are neurodivergent? Open plan offices, they can be an absolute nightmare. For me, the noise, the sensory overload, the chatter, the phone ringing, somebody even just boiling a kettle if a kitchen's close by, things like that, that would just drive me insane. You can try and drown it out with noise cancelling headphones or things like that. I tried that in one organization and was told off and told to remove them because it was off-putting to everybody else to see me with my headphones on. Nowadays they're a lot more you got your earbuds and things like that, whereas before they could be quite bulky and so on. So there's lots of more discreet ways of using these devices, but I really did feel quite sort of told off when I was told to remove my headphones because it was off-putting to other people. And colours and decor. I remember once a few years ago, when I was seeking a new job opportunity, I went to have a look around. They had a recruitment day at a place in Hartlebury, not far from me. And as soon as I walked in, I thought, I cannot work here. They had bright orange colours and different pieces of furniture that were different shapes, and it was just so much of an overload. I couldn't have worked there. Too much noise, as I alluded to earlier. I just can't cope with that, and a lot of neurodivergent people are the same. Frequent interruptions. So for me, if I'm head down into a piece of work, or I'm trying to write a white paper or an important piece, and somebody comes up and interrupts that creative flow, it really winds me up, and it takes me a long time to get back into that creative process again. And frequent meetings as well, whether these be in-person or virtual ones, with no downtime in between them. I find those quite jarring. And like I just mentioned earlier, I've made sure that this afternoon is clear of things like that, for example, just to give me that much needed downtime. And I'm always really careful about making sure that even if it's just a virtual call, I have a bit of time before and after to decompress my thoughts from that call if I need it. So how can you support those that are neurodiverse in the workplace? So be as supportive as you can with workplace adaptation requests, such as things like flexible working hours or working from home and hybrid working. Certainly since the pandemic, working from home options and a mix of hybrid working, organizations have taken that on board now. And even if they've transitioned a lot of their staff back to an office space, it may be with hybrid working models, so a couple of days in the office and the rest of the time at home, or working solely from home. I've made a personal choice to work from home solely because that's where I feel I do my best work in my own space, and I can keep the decor to how I want, the furniture to how I want, and the noise levels by and large to how I want as well. Consider providing breakout or quiet spaces. And this is something I'm actually having a discussion with conference organisers about, because I like to go to a lot of conferences within the cybersecurity industry, so InfoSec or UK Cyber Week and the National Cyber Show and things like that. But they are the absolute, I really need days to decompress after those because the sheer volume of the noise and the exhibition stands and everything else that goes on from a sensory perspective. I've been having those discussions about conference organisers providing quiet spaces or breakout rooms for attendees that are neurodiverse. And studies also show that particularly within the cybersecurity industry, those that are neurodiverse are well suited to careers in cyber. So providing those spaces, I think, would be of great advantage and allow more people to consider going to them. There's one or two that, as much as I would love to go to, like InfoSec in June, it's just far, far too much for me to deal with, unless there are those quiet spaces that I can retreat into, even if it's just for a few minutes, to just go, okay, I just need that quiet time, and then I can get back out into the room. And again, be mindful of things like bright colours or patterns in the office. As I mentioned earlier, some of the designs and the colours and things, it's very trendy to have those bright orange colours or bright green or pink or so on, but they can be really overwhelming to somebody that's neurodiverse. So be mindful of that. As I mentioned earlier, allowing that downtime in between calls and meetings, that for me is really, really important and something that I do on a regular basis. And also being mindful of the need to use headphones to block out noise. Other ways you can look at supporting those that are neurodiverse in the workplace, you can look to improve workplace well-being by implementing a good well-being system, such as an employee assistance program. So advertising that well, making staff aware of who they need to go to, who the representatives are, and also consider having a mental health first aider. Every organisation has to have a first aid certified person. I see mental health as being just as important, if not more important, and having those individuals and being able to promote who they are is key, so that people know that they can go to those people if they're struggling and they just need to talk a bit or get a few things off their chest. And as mental health first aiders, we can then signpost people to relevant resources and so on that may be able to help them. I became a mental health first aider because not only because I was subjected to a lot of bullying and abuse within the cybersecurity industry, but I saw a lot of other people within the industry being subjected to it. So I became a mental health first aider to be able to help those that also were going through it as well. When I went through it, it was the most soul-destroying thing I could imagine. And I don't want anybody else to have to go through that. Another thing you can do is display appropriate support literature and signpost that regularly so people know where to go for that information. Providing clear information of what and who to go to get that vital support. And all this will help neurodivergent individuals feel much more confident and secure in their roles. Encourage openness. So, have those open discussions, about mental health, and have those discussions with neurodivergent individuals about what suits them. And bear in mind, there is no one size fits all. So what would support me won't necessarily support another neurodiverse individual. Everyone is different. So having those discussions is absolutely key. And treat every employee equally, whether they're neurotypical or neurodiverse. If everybody has the access to the same support and knows where they can go for that support, all the better. And talk about differences to help those that are neurodiverse feel much more supported in the workplace. I've had conversations recently with Qualitas, the organisation I'm working for at the moment, and they're incredibly supportive of my recent ADHD diagnosis and know what I need to be able to do really well in my role and deliver my best work. And that's what it's all about. If you can make people feel really comfortable and secure and know that they can deliver the very best pieces of work that they can for you, that is just that's a utopia that I would love to see all organizations get to, hopefully very soon. So some other ways to help accept that neurodivergence is a part of human diversity. As I just said, we're all different and there is no one size fits all. And neurodivergence doesn't define someone, but it can be a very important part of their identity. So for myself, for years, I knew and I felt that I just wasn't the same as everybody else. And I struggled so much with social situations, with office banter, being based in an office. I struggled at school, I struggled at college. At school, I had the added thing of being isolated when doing my GCSE exams, because the exams took place in June, which happens to be prime hay fever season for me. And despite taking 2 strong antihistamines on the morning of my maths exam, I was sneezing a lot, which was obviously they thought was other people that were taking the exam. And I was asked to move and put into a room, and I was completely isolated. And that really made me feel that I was different to everybody else, that I couldn't even take an exam in the same room as other people. And also recognize that no 2 neurodivergent people are the same. They will have different goals and they'll have different needs. So as I said earlier, where I can cope in a work situation, I need support in the home. And I often will ask my husband for things that you might probably think, why on earth can't she do that? Or why on earth does she need to ask that? But I can't seem to get the 2 to work in tangent. So where I need support is things within the home. So recognize that no 2 neurodivergent people are the same. Advocate for practices in your workplace that accept and accommodate neurodivergence. And this is a really important one, but can be really difficult to do. Speak up if you hear or see someone prejudiced against someone who is neurodivergent. Be that really important ally for neurodivergent people. Just by telling them that they can come to you if they need to talk or need some help, that can be of just such a huge help to them. And it certainly is to me. And celebrate those that are neurodivergent in the workplace. They're different, they're not difficult. And if that support structure can be put in place, it can really, really pay dividends. And neurodivergent individuals can be a great asset to any organization. So that's it from me. I'll be happy to take some questions or comments or answer what I can. And I'll hand back over to Simon.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I mean, that was incredible. And even though we've, spoken many times, I still, when you talk about your personal journey, it's an incredible, I guess, revelation that you've come on. This realization that it's okay that I'm not going to go and be sociable. I'm not in a bad way. I don't mean that, but it's like I'm going to do what's best for me, and that takes a lot of courage, doesn't it?
It does, Simon. And I like going to conferences and events and things, and I've done them and I do them, but it is at a great cost, and I have to factor in that downtime, and I have to just be mindful of a couple of days before, a couple of days after. And it is a discussion I am having with a lot of conference organizers to provide those quiet spaces. And as I said, in the cyber industry, there are a lot of neurodiverse people, and I know neurodiverse people that won't go because there just isn't those quiet spaces that they can retreat to when they need it.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept, because, as you say, before you have that realization, or before that you have that sort of cognizance that you're going to do things differently, most of us would have just carried on doing the same old thing, getting the same old overwhelm, and then not actually realizing it. But I think your standing up for it is very inspiring. And it looks like there's a couple of individuals in the chat who's Rebecca said, you did an incredible job. Speaking openly and honestly allows others to feel that they can do the same. I think that's really, really important. And Mandy said she knows you as a friend, which is lovely, but
Hi,
they
Mandy.
realized that they realized as a family over a number of many years that despite no official diagnosis, most of her family members are neurodivergent. And she goes on to cite the recent documentary from Chris Packham. I don't know if you've seen that at all. Have you?
I confess, I've got them recorded, but I haven't had the chance to watch them yet. But I have heard a lot of good things about those documentaries. So I'm going to find some time to watch the two together, again, with that bit of downtime before and after. And that's why I've not done it yet. Because like, no, I need that before and after downtime to compress what I've seen and heard. So, yeah.
You'll also need some tissues as well, especially if you watch the Murray video, which is just incredible. And Charlotte said, thank you, Lisa, really helpful. She's going to be using this info to support employees in the business she works for, and also her son, which I think is really important, because although we're talking, both of us, a lot around workplaces, this is really something that we can use on our friends and family as well, isn't it? Just those reasonable adjustments.
Absolutely. I can tell you my story from my perspective in terms of, I was obviously diagnosed quite late in life. I was in my mid-40s when I was diagnosed with autism, and recently last month with ADHD and BDP traits. My parents don't know about my ADHD diagnosis because unfortunately I'm estranged from them. But when I was diagnosed as autistic, I had the diagnosis in hand, in writing. I told them about it, and my dad just nastily threw it down and said, no, you can't possibly be autistic. And when I questioned why he might think that, my mum chimed in and said, well, because when you were at school, not one of your teachers said to us that you might be autistic, so you can't possibly be autistic. Whoever's done that is completely wrong. And what I would just say to parents is, please don't be like that. Don't use that. Just support your children, support your. They are different. They're not difficult, and and there's nothing about us without us as well. Talk to other people that are neurodivergent. As I said, there's no one size fits all. We're all different, and we're all going to have our own experiences that we can share as well.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and Charlotte's just said she's constantly fighting for her son in his school, and that's we see that a lot. There's only so much funding, and there's a lot of individuals now sort of thinking, oh, people are jumping on the ADHD bandwagon. It's like, well, no, people are recognizing the signs and the symptoms now, not only later on in life, but actually that that they are present in school, but a lot of individuals are masking, as you clearly did when you were growing up as well.
Absolutely. That's all I knew. I just kept masking myself to fit into this work group or that group, or be able to do that activity. It was constant having to mask all the time. And I don't do that so much now. I said, this is what I need to thrive, no pun intended, and to be as good as I can be. And those are the things that I've put in place.
It's absolutely brilliant. And Rebecca sounds who's working for an amazing organisation, Susanne, been self-diagnosed for ADHD for a while now, currently going through the official assessment. However, she's using that so she can explain the unique differences in working styles. But the company have developed a working group around this, which I think is amazing progress, isn't it?
Absolutely is. And if you can get your organization on board with this and get a working group together, or a small steering committee or something like that, and really champion it in the workplace, I would love to see all organizations do that. And I really believe all organizations, no matter what their size, should have a mental health first aider. I think we've got our regular first aiders. It's just as important, if not more. They should have a mental health first aider in every organization, regardless of size.
Completely agree. And I mean, we're actually, as you know, we're sort of rolling out our Neurodiversity in the workplace training across quite a large number of public sectors and private sectors at the moment. And I think it's that whole thing, isn't it? We started to look after people's mental health, and now actually starting to look after their work practices, their work styles, and saying that how important it is just to and we've got to remember that those reasonable adjustments that you make for neurodiverse individuals will help everyone. If there's no signs to go to the toilet, whether you're neurodiverse or otherwise, you need a sign to go to the toilet. These things will help everyone. It's not about you know, singling people out. It's about making sweeping changes in an organization that's going to help everybody as well. So and we've got a lovely conversation going on in the chat really around neurodiversity isn't a measure of intelligence for academia. It's behaviors and traits that we need to make allowances for. Absolutely. And Mandy's saying that it was a real shame that none of the school teachers picked up or her hugely talented niece and nephew, because they masked so well, and you sort of, you know, we just need to make this message more widely known, don't we, Lisa?
Absolutely. And an interesting fact is that girls will tend to mask more than boys, apparently. So it would tend to be picked up in boys a lot more easily, and girls will mask a lot more.
It's such a that higher level of and again, you know, someone sort of said about that, it's not intelligence, it's but girls just seem to be able to, I don't know, to sort of hide their inner turmoil in some cases more so than some boys do, and you know, and then they get told they're naughty children, and it sort of goes out
I've
there.
got a specific example of that when I was only about 5, and I can remember this like I was yesterday, but I took in a chocolate cake that because it was my birthday for all the classmates to have, and I was fidgeting, and I was told to stop fidgeting, but I just couldn't stop fidgeting. So I was sent out, told to stand against the wall with my face against it, while all the other children enjoyed all the cake, and by the time they let me come back in, couldn't even have a bit of my own birthday cake. There you go.
Terrible. And unfortunately that won't be unique, will it? There'll be lots of scenes.
Absolutely.
Charlotte's just put out, she had a manager tell me this morning that a fantastic employee in his team is dyspraxic, but told him he would leave because he knows he struggles with one element of his role. The manager was shocked. He told him he's fantastic in so many areas of his job, and it was music to my ears. We're going to meet him to see what support he needs. That's a brilliant story. Thank you for sharing that, Charlotte. Yeah, we had we were on site at a rather large company about 2 weeks ago now, and we were talking to a particular manager, and he said that he pointed to an individual that had his back to us, and he was tapping away at an Excel spreadsheet, and he said that that individual was on a forklift truck for about 2 years, struggled, didn't really enjoy the job. And then one day he sort of said, do you fancy coming in and doing some of the spreadsheets? And the guy, yeah, that'd be quite good. And he said, it's just amazing, just incredible, because what they've done, a manager recognized that a slightly different skill set, a slightly different focus, and you can have you know, you enable an employee to fly. And I think that's just wonderful to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. More support that you can provide, the better, and it'll allow all your employees to thrive.
That is brilliant, and thank you for fitting 5 in at the last minute there as well, Lisa. Lisa, thank you again so much for today. Thank you everyone for joining this session today. It has been recorded and it is going to go live on our website. As you can see from the screen there, our next webinar is on the 29th of March in 2023, and it's going to be looking at healthy boundaries on social media. I know I need that. And I do see young Lisa there occasionally going onto Twitter quite a lot, but it's good in small measures, isn't it, Lisa?
Yeah, it is. I definitely need this next one. I'll be signing up.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you for joining us. Take care, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye-bye.